OCD stands for obsessive compulsive disorder. And it's a type of mental health illness where a person will obsess over a thought that brings them heightened anxiety. In order to cope with this anxiety, they will act out a compulsion that's meant to reduce their distress. And of course, this compulsion will bring them temporary relief until they have another thought that will bring them anxiety, and the OCD cycle continues. How is OCD a disorder? For many people, the OCD cycle causes a disorder in their lives. Although compulsions are meant to lessen a person's anxiety, in the long term, the OCD cycle actually increases anxiety in their lives instead of decreasing it. In order to illustrate this point, I came up with a fictional story about a man named Paul. Now, Paul has a lot of anxiety in life. And one day, he has this image or intrusive thought of him getting in a car accident. And it causes him intense fear. He's afraid of getting hurt, and he's afraid of accidentally hurting other people. In order to prevent this from happening, he decides to avoid driving as much as he can. He was hoping that if he avoided driving, then he could avoid the possibility or lessen the possibility of him getting into a car accident. And avoidance is a really common type of compulsion for people with OCD. And in Paul's case, he incrementally or step by step started avoiding driving more and more. Instead of going to the grocery store once a week to buy groceries, he started to buy Uber Eats or buy more takeout. And this increased his grocery bill by quite a lot. So now Paul is having a lot of distress, not just about the thought of him getting into a car accident, but now Paul is having a lot of distress about his income and being able to pay all of his bills because now his food bill has increased. It gets to the point where Paul is so afraid of getting in a car accident that he stops going to work completely, and he ends up losing his job. Now Paul has even more financial stress, and he has even more anxiety than he did before he engaged in his OCD cycle. Defining obsessions. Obsessions are unwanted images, thoughts, or imagined potential events. These thoughts cause a person a lot of anxiety or distress. In the example that we used before, for Paul, his obsession was the intrusive thought of him getting into a car accident. In order to cope with the anxiety that these obsessions bring, people will act out a compulsion. Defining compulsions. Compulsions are acts or rituals someone acts out with the intention of decreasing their anxiety. Compulsions can be acted out in a rigid or even in an unrigid way. Really, how a person engages in their compulsions is individual to them. It varies from person to person. No matter how a person acts out their compulsions, or no matter what their compulsions are, the goal is always the same. It is to reduce their anxiety. Common types of OCD. Common types of OCD are hoarding, checking, intrusive thoughts, symmetry and ordering, cleaning and contamination. Common OCD subjects are sexual orientation thoughts, postpartum OCD. For example, a really common postpartum OCD fear would be the fear of dropping your newborn baby. It's really common for new parents to have postpartum OCD. Fear of failure, like the fear of failing as a parent or getting fired from a job. OCD subjects that are religious in nature. Scrupulosity, which is about being a good person, or the fear of doing something immoral or wrong. Harm OCD, it could be the fear of harming yourself, the fear of harming other people. Relationship OCD. The subject of relationships could be that someone is afraid that they're not actually in love with their spouse. They're afraid that they are lying to their spouse about being in love with them. Or they're afraid that their partner will leave them, or that they'll leave their partner. Germs. For this one, they could be afraid that they will touch a surface that has germs on it. It can get them sick. Mental or physical health. The fear of dying. Forgetting things. A common one is being afraid that you forgot to turn off your oven. So you go back and check over and over again to see if you have turned off your oven before leaving the house, because you're afraid that if you forget to turn off your oven, then your house will burn down. Okay, let's wrap up this first episode by talking about the most common treatment for people with OCD. Mental health professionals will most commonly use exposure response prevention therapy to help treat clients with OCD issues. Exposure response prevention therapy, or more commonly known as ERP, is a very effective treatment to help people stop engaging in their compulsions. That's the main idea of this type of therapy. A licensed professional therapist who has training in this type of therapy will help a client to not engage in their compulsions. They'll expose them to what they're afraid of to sort of trigger the OCD cycle, and they'll get to the obsession, the anxiety, and then when they normally engage in their compulsions, which is number 3 in the OCD cycle, the therapist will help them to prevent themselves from engaging in that compulsion. So that's it for this video. In the next video, I'm going to talk about intrusive thoughts and how people with OCD view their thoughts differently than people without OCD. And I'll be talking about why it's so difficult for them to not engage in their compulsions. So stay tuned, and I'll see you next time.